My name is Grace. I am 19 years old. I live in a small city near the sea. It is a busy place with many people, shops, and noise. I live in a small apartment with one person. His name is Paul. He is not my real father, but I call him Dad. He took care of me since I was 2 years old. He is the only family I have. Paul is not like other people. Some people say he is slow. Some say he does not speak like a grown man. But he has a kind heart. He always smiles. He sings when he washes dishes. He makes tea for me in the morning. He tells me, "Grace, you are my sunshine." I always smile when I hear that. He cannot read books. He never went to school, but he walks me to the bus stop every day. He waits for me after work. He brings me my favorite juice when I feel sad. Some people laugh at him. They say, "Is that your father?" He looks strange, but I don't care. He is my world. He works at a small shop in the town. He helps the owner clean and pack boxes. The pay is small, but he is happy to work. One day, my life changed. It was a Friday. The sun was hot. I went to the bakery after work. I wanted to buy bread for dinner. As I walked home, I saw something strange. A police car stopped near the corner shop. I saw 2 officers go inside. Then I saw them come out with Paul. His hands were behind his back. He looked scared. He looked around like a lost child. Then he saw me. "Grace!" he shouted. "I didn't do it." I ran toward him. "What's happening?" I asked the police. One man said, "He stole money from the cash box." "No," I said. "That can't be true." My father would never steal anything. They pushed him into the car. Paul cried, "Grace, I don't know why this is happening." I stood there, frozen. My hands were cold. My heart was fast. People on the street looked at me. Some whispered. Some pointed. I wanted to scream. That night, I sat on the floor. I did not eat dinner. The bread was still in the bag. I stared at Paul's shoes near the door. His teacup was still on the table. His jacket was on the chair. But he was gone. I held his old sweater. It smelled like soap. I remembered the songs he sang while washing the floor. I remembered how he laughed at old cartoons. I remembered how he cried when I hurt my knee as a child. I went to the police station early the next morning. My eyes were red. My voice was dry. I said, "Can I see my father?" The man behind the desk said, "You are too young. Go home." "He is not a thief," I said. "He did nothing wrong." The man looked at me. He looked tired. He said, "There was money missing. He was the only one in the shop. That's all we know." I sat outside the station for hours. I didn't care about the time. I didn't care about food. I just wanted to see him. Later, an older man came out of the side door. He wore a gray coat. He had keys on his belt. He looked at me kindly. "Are you waiting for someone?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "My father. His name is Paul. They took him yesterday." The man sighed. "I'm just the cleaner here, but I saw him. He was crying last night. He kept saying your name." Tears filled my eyes. "He is scared," I said. "He does not understand what is happening." The man gave me a small sandwich from his lunch bag. "Here, you need to eat." "Thank you," I said. I ate slowly. Every bite felt heavy. When I walked home that evening, I felt tired. Not just in my body. My heart was heavy. The sky was gray. My street was quiet. But when I reached our door, I stopped. There were red letters on the wall. Someone had painted them. It said, "Thief's House." I froze. My legs felt weak. I touched the wall. My fingers shook. Why are people so cruel? They don't know him. They don't know his heart. I ran inside and closed the door. I sat on the floor and cried. I wanted to scream, but no sound came. Just tears. Then I remembered Paul's voice. "Grace," he used to say, "when you feel sad, just sing a little song. It helps." I did not sing, but I whispered, "I will help you, Dad. I will not let you stay in that place. You don't belong there." The next morning, I went to the library. I found books about justice. I could not understand every word, but I tried. I took notes. I copied sentences. One line stayed in my mind. An innocent man should not sit in prison. I wrote it down and showed it to my teacher. Her name was Miss Helen. She looked at the words. Then she looked at me. "Why did you write this?" she asked. I took a deep breath. "It's about my father," I said. "They say he stole money, but he didn't." Miss Helen sat down. "I remember him. He came to your school play last year. He cried when you read your poem." I smiled. "Yes, that was him." She looked serious. "Grace, would you like me to talk to someone? I have a friend who is a lawyer." My heart jumped. "Yes, please. I don't have anyone else." She touched my hand gently. "Let's see what we can do." That night, I looked out the window. The stars were bright. I held Paul's sweater close. "I will help you, Dad," I whispered. "I don't care how hard it is." Before I share the rest of my story, I need to know, where are you listening from? Knowing someone hears me, understands me, gives me strength. The next day, Miss Helen came to my house after school. She brought a small folder in her hand. She sat with me at the table. Her voice was soft. "My friend is a young lawyer," she said. "Her name is Lisa. She read about your father. She wants to help." My heart felt full. "Can I meet her?" "Yes," Miss Helen said. "She will come tomorrow, after school." That night, I cleaned the house. I made tea. I looked at the photo of me and Paul on the wall. I smiled. He was holding a birthday cake. I was only 10. That was the happiest day of my life. The next afternoon, Lisa came. She looked young and smart. She wore a brown coat and carried a notebook. She shook my hand. "Hello, Grace. Miss Helen told me everything. I want to help your father." "Thank you," I said. "I don't know what to do. I'm scared." Lisa gave me a kind smile. "You are strong. I can see that. You already started the fight for him. That is brave." She asked me many questions. "Where was your father when the money was taken? What time did it happen? Who else was there?" I answered as best as I could. Then she said something important. "We need to find the truth. We need to find someone who saw what happened." I looked down. "Nobody will help. People already think he is guilty." "Not everyone," Lisa said. "We just have to look harder." She gave me a list. "We will go to the shop. We will speak to the owner. We will check if there is a camera. Maybe someone saw something." I nodded. "Yes, I will do anything." That night, I could not sleep. I kept thinking about Paul. Was he cold? Was he scared? Was he crying? I closed my eyes and saw his face behind the glass. The next morning, Lisa took me to the shop. It was closed, but the owner was inside. He looked tired and angry. His name was Mr. Raymond. "You again?" he said. "Why are you here?" Lisa spoke calmly. "We are here for Paul. Grace believes he is not guilty." We want to see the security video from that day. Mr. Raymond crossed his arms. The camera was broken. No video. Lisa looked at him. When did it break? He paused. Last week. 2 days before the money went missing. Lisa wrote that down. Did anyone else have keys to the cash box? He looked away. Only me. And Paul. But he is not smart enough to trick anyone. I stepped forward. He is kind. He is honest. You know that. You worked with him for 2 years. The man said nothing. He picked up a box and walked away. Lisa whispered, "He is hiding something." We stood outside the shop. The street was quiet. Lisa looked at her notebook. Next step. We talked to people who were there. Maybe a neighbor, a customer, anyone. That afternoon, we knocked on many doors. Some people closed their doors. Some said, "Sorry, I saw nothing." But one woman said, "Wait." I saw something strange that day. My heart beat fast. What did you see? She said, I was near the shop. I saw a man come out fast. He wore a black jacket. He looked around and walked away quickly. Did you see Paul? Lisa asked. Yes, the woman said. He came out a minute later. He looked confused. He kept looking at the cash box in his hands. Lisa gave her a paper and pen. Can you write a short note? Just what you saw? The woman nodded. Yes, I can do that. I thanked her. You have no idea how much this means. We went back to Lisa's office. She looked at the note again and again. Paul came out second, she said. Someone else was in there first. Maybe that person took the money. Paul just found the box. I closed my eyes. Yes, that makes sense. He would never take it. He was just scared. Lisa called the police station. She asked for a short visit. She said, I need to speak to Paul with Grace. Please, just 5 minutes. The next day we went to see him. My hands were shaking. I felt cold inside. We sat in a small room. Paul was brought in. He wore gray clothes. His hair was messy. His face looked tired. But when he saw me, he smiled. Grace, he said, you came. I ran to the table. I wanted to hug him, but we were not allowed. I miss you, Dad. I miss you too, sweet girl, he said. Lisa spoke kindly. Paul, can you tell us what happened that day? He looked down. I was cleaning the back room. I heard a noise. When I came out, the cash box was open. Some money was missing. Did you see anyone? Lisa asked. He nodded slowly. A man. I don't know his name. He came to the shop once or twice. He wore a black jacket. Did he say anything? He said, the boss is not here. Okay. And then he left. I thought maybe he was a friend of the owner, but then I saw the box. Lisa took notes. She looked at me. This matches what the neighbor said. Paul looked at her. Do you believe me? Yes, she said. We believe you. We will help you. Tears ran down my face. Paul smiled, but his eyes were still full of pain. The guard called time. We had to leave. Stay strong, I said. We are not giving up. Paul gave me a small wave. Thank you, Grace. You are my sunshine. As we walked out, Lisa said, we now have a witness. We have Paul's story. We just need to find the man in the black jacket. I nodded. How do we find him? I have an idea, she said. The next few days passed slowly. Every morning I woke up and looked at Paul's empty chair. His shoes were still by the door. His favorite blue cup sat untouched on the kitchen shelf. I missed his quiet singing, his laugh, his gentle voice calling me sunshine. The apartment felt too big and too quiet without him. At night, I could not sleep. I would sit by the window with his old sweater in my hands, whispering to myself, "I'm still trying, Dad. I won't stop." Lisa called me on Thursday afternoon. Her voice was full of energy. "Grace," she said, "I think I found something. Do you remember the man your father talked about, the one in the black jacket?" I nodded, even though she could not see me. "Yes," I said. "He saw that man leave before he found the cash box open." Lisa continued. "I looked at the records. A man named Rick had visited the shop 2 times before. He used to work in a shop across the street. I went there today. The owner said Rick was fired last month. He was always asking for money. Sometimes he took things without paying. And guess what? He also wears a black jacket." I felt a light in my chest. "Do you think he did it?" I asked. Lisa said, "I do. But we need proof." The next day, Lisa spoke to a police officer she trusted. His name was Officer Hill. He agreed to help. He said they could not arrest Rick without evidence, but he would visit him and ask questions. That afternoon, Officer Hill went to Rick's apartment. Rick was not happy. He said he had never even been inside the shop. But when the officer looked around the room, he found something strange. There was a red envelope on Rick's desk. Inside was cash, and on the back of the envelope were the shop's initials, R.S., for Raymond's store. Officer Hill asked him, "Where did you get this?" Rick said he found it on the ground, but he could not say where or when. The story didn't make sense. Officer Hill took a photo of the envelope and showed it to Lisa. She showed it to Mr. Raymond, the shop owner. He turned pale. "That's mine," he said. "That's how I mark all the cash drops." Lisa smiled. "Then we may be close to the truth." On Saturday morning, I met Lisa at her office again. She told me that Officer Hill had written a full report. He also gave a copy to the court. The judge agreed to reopen Paul's case. We had to go to court again next week. I felt nervous, but I was ready. I wanted to stand by my father and tell the world that he was not a bad man. He was kind, gentle, and honest. He did not deserve to sit in jail. On the day of the court hearing, I wore my nicest dress. I brushed my hair and packed Paul's favorite sweater in my bag. I told myself, "Stay strong. This is the day everything can change." Lisa and I entered the courthouse together. It was a big room with many chairs and a tall wooden table where the judge would sit. Paul sat with a lawyer on one side. He looked small in his gray clothes. But when he saw me, he smiled, and that gave me hope. The judge came in and everyone stood. Then the room became quiet. Lisa stood up and spoke first. She told the judge that Paul did not take the money. She said that another man, named Rick, had entered the shop before Paul found the open box. She gave the note from the neighbor to the judge. She showed the photo of the red envelope. She told the judge that the money inside was marked with the shop's initials. The judge listened carefully. Then he asked, "Did this man, Rick, confess to anything?" Officer Hill stood up. "No, Your Honor." But his story changed many times, and he had no clear reason for having the envelope. Lisa then said something I will never forget. "Paul may not speak like other men. He may walk slowly or laugh loudly, but that does not mean he is a thief. Being different does not mean being guilty." I looked at my father. His hands were shaking. His eyes were full of water. The judge read the notes again. Then he looked at Paul. "Do you want to speak?" he asked. Paul stood up slowly. His voice was quiet. I did not take the money. I just wanted to work. I liked helping Mr. Raymond. I didn't want to hurt anyone. When I saw the open box, I was scared. I didn't know what to do. I only thought about Grace. I didn't want her to see me in trouble. Then he sat down. The room was silent. The judge looked around. Then he said, "Paul, you are free to go." I could not breathe. I felt like time had stopped. Then I stood up. I ran across the room. I ran into my father's arms. He held me tight, and we both cried. "I told you I didn't do it," he whispered. "I know, Dad," I said. "I believed you from the start." Lisa smiled at us from the side. Officer Hill gave a small nod. Some people in the room clapped. Others wiped their eyes. Mr. Raymond looked down and said nothing. We walked out of the courthouse together. The sun was bright. The air felt clean. For the first time in weeks, I felt light. I felt safe. We went home. Paul opened the door slowly. He looked around the room. He saw his blue cup, his jacket, his old shoes. He smiled. "Home," he said. I nodded. "Yes, Dad. You're home." I made tea and we sat by the window. He looked at the birds and hummed a small tune. I leaned on his shoulder. I had missed that sound. I had missed his warmth. That night, I looked at the stars again. I held his hand and said, "You're not a thief, Dad. You never were. You're my father, my friend, my hero." Some days later, Miss Helen came to visit us. She brought flowers and cookies. She hugged Paul and said, "You have a very brave daughter." Paul smiled and looked at me. "She is my sunshine," he said. Then he looked at Miss Helen. "Thank you for helping us." Lisa also came. She brought a small notebook for me. "You can use this," she said, "to write your own story. I think one day you'll help others too." I thanked her with all my heart. Without her, my father might still be in that cold room behind the glass wall. Weeks passed, and things became normal again. Paul found a small new job helping an older man clean boats near the water. He came home with wet shoes and a happy face. I started taking night classes to study law. I wanted to understand the world better. I wanted to help people who had no voice. One evening, I stood by the window again. Paul was singing in the kitchen. The smell of tea filled the air. I closed my eyes and smiled. This story is not just about a man who was called a thief. It is not just about me, a girl with no mother and no fancy things. It is about love, about truth, about standing up when you are alone. It is about believing in someone, even when the whole world says they are guilty. It is about never giving up. My father is not perfect. He forgets things. He talks too much during movies. He wears socks that don't match. But he is kind. He is honest. And he is mine. Thank you for listening to my story. If you have someone in your life who loves you like that, hold them close. Trust them. And when life gets hard, remember this. Truth may take time, but it always finds the light. My name is Lydia. I am 38 years old. I live in a small flat with my husband and 2 teenage sons. I used to have a job in a clothing store, but I left it last year. I thought my family would support me, but I was wrong. I worked in that store for almost 7 years. I sold shirts, dresses, and shoes. I talked to customers, folded clothes, and cleaned the shelves. At first, I liked it. I liked earning my own money. I liked buying small gifts for my children and helping to pay the bills. But the manager was not kind. She wanted us to work late hours without pay. She wanted the shop perfect, even if it meant staying until midnight. My back hurt, my feet hurt, and my smile started to feel fake. One night I came home so tired I could not eat. I sat on the bed and thought, I cannot do this anymore. The next morning, I told my manager I was leaving. She did not ask me to stay. She just said, "Fine." When I told my husband, he said, "You did the right thing. You should not stay where you are unhappy." His words made me feel warm. I thought he understood me. I thought he would give me time to rest and find something better. For the first few weeks, I stayed home. I cleaned, cooked, and took care of my sons. I told myself I would start looking for work soon. But inside, I had another idea. I wanted to bake from home. I always loved baking bread and cakes. The smell of warm bread made me happy. I thought maybe I could sell it to neighbors, friends, and small cafes. I thought maybe I could have my own small business. But I told no one. I was afraid they would laugh. After a month, my husband started to change. One evening, as we ate dinner, he said, "You are home all day. I am paying for everything. This is not fair." His voice was not loud, but it hurt me. I said, "I am looking for work." He only answered, "Then try harder." Every morning I woke up early. I made breakfast, cleaned the kitchen, and swept the floor. After my sons left for school, the flat became quiet. I washed clothes, cleaned the bathroom, and went to the market. I cooked lunch and prepared dinner. I worked all day in the house, but no one said thank you. One Sunday, my older sister came to visit. She looked around the flat and said, "You keep this place clean, but it does not bring money. Why not get a real job?" I told her softly, "I have an idea to bake bread and cakes from home." She laughed a little and said, "That is not a business. You need something serious." That night I could not sleep. I kept hearing her words. Maybe she was right. Maybe no one would take me seriously. The next day, I decided to try anyway. I baked 2 loaves of bread, just for myself. I shaped them with care. I brushed them with egg so they would shine. The smell filled the flat. When my neighbor came to return a bowl she had borrowed, she stopped at the door and said, "It smells wonderful." I gave her 1 loaf to take home. She smiled and said, "If you sell these, I will buy from you." Her words stayed with me all day. Still, life at home was not easy. My husband came home from work looking tired. Sometimes he said nothing. Sometimes he asked again, "Did you find a job yet?" I wanted to tell him my dream, but I was scared he would say it was useless. My sons were busy with school. They did not ask how I was feeling. I began to feel invisible. I could be cooking, cleaning, baking, and no one noticed unless something was missing. One afternoon, I sat at the kitchen table with a notebook. I wrote down what I would need to start baking for others: flour, sugar, yeast, eggs, boxes, and bags. I added the prices. It was not a big amount, but without my own income, it felt impossible. I thought about the days when I worked in the shop. Even with the shouting manager, I had my own money. I could buy a scarf if I wanted. I could give my sons a treat. Now I had to ask my husband for every coin. It made me feel small. One evening, I went for a walk. The air was cool. The streetlights were on. I passed a small cafe and looked through the window. People were drinking coffee and laughing. I wished I could be one of them, not worrying about the price of tea. I walked home slowly, feeling heavy inside. When I got back, I made tea for myself and sat by the window. I watched the lights in other buildings. I told myself, I will not give up. I will try. The next morning, I opened my notebook again. This time, I did not write about costs. I wrote my favorite recipes: soft bread rolls, cinnamon cake, fruit pie. I imagined people eating them and smiling. I imagined handing over a warm loaf to a customer. I imagined feeling proud again. That afternoon, I baked a small cake and took it to my parents' house. My mother took a bite and said, "This is the best cake I have tasted." My father smiled and said, "If you sell this, people will come." It was the first time in months I felt someone believed in me. That night, I slept better. I still had no money for supplies, but I had a small fire in my heart. I told myself I would find a way. I would take small steps. I would not let anyone put out this dream. I did not know how long it would take. I only knew I could not stop. The next weeks were not easy. My husband grew more impatient. Some nights he came home and did not speak to me at all. Other nights he said, "You still have no job. We cannot live like this." I tried to smile and say, "I am trying," but my voice was weak. My sons also began to notice the tension. They spoke less at dinner. They spent more time in their rooms. I missed the evenings when we would all talk and laugh together. Now the air in the flat felt heavy, like a storm was coming. I kept baking for practice. I made bread, small cakes, and cookies. I gave them to neighbors and to my parents. They smiled and said nice things, but no one bought anything yet. Every time I baked, I hoped someone would ask for more. No one did. One Saturday morning, my sister called. She said, "I heard you are still making bread. Lydia, you should stop this. Find real work. This is a waste of time." Her voice was sharp, and I felt like I was back in school, being scolded. I wanted to defend myself, but I just said, "I will think about it." That afternoon, I went to the market. I passed a stall selling fresh bread. People were buying quickly. I stood for a moment and watched. The bread was not even as soft as mine, but people still bought it. I thought, if they can sell, so can I. My heart felt a little stronger. But the money problem was real. Bills kept coming. My husband reminded me every few days that we needed more income. "We cannot pay for everything with my salary," he said. "This is not my job alone." I wanted to shout, "And cleaning the house is not just my job alone either." But I stayed quiet. One Monday morning, I felt more tired than usual. I had washed clothes, cooked lunch, and cleaned the whole kitchen. My hands were dry from soap. My back hurt from bending. I sat down for a moment. When I tried to get up, my head felt heavy. I stayed in the chair, staring at the floor. My husband came home for lunch. He looked around and said, "Why is the floor dirty? Why didn't you sweep?" I wanted to say I was not feeling well, but instead I said, "I will do it later." He shook his head and muttered something under his breath. After he left, I went to the bedroom and closed the door. I lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling. I thought, why does no one see me? Why does no one ask if I am okay? I give my time, my work, and my care every day. But I feel invisible. 2 days later, the same feeling came back. I was in the kitchen washing dishes. The water was warm, but my heart felt cold. My hands started shaking. I put the plate down, sat on the floor, and cried into a towel. I cried until my eyes were sore and my head hurt. When my sons came home, I quickly wiped my face. I did not want them to see me like that. I made them tea and asked about their day. Inside, I felt empty. That night, I could not sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea. The flat was dark and quiet. I looked at my notebook of recipes. I ran my fingers over the pages. I thought, I have to try harder. I cannot wait for someone to give me permission to start. The next morning, I took a small step. I baked 4 loaves of bread and put them in a basket. I went to 3 neighbors and offered them for sale. The first 2 said no. The third neighbor, an older man, bought one. He said, "I will tell my friends. This is good bread." It was only one sale, but it felt like a big victory. That evening, I told my husband. He looked surprised. "You sold bread? For how much?" I told him. He nodded and said, "It is a start." His voice was softer than before. Over the next week, I sold 3 more loaves and 1 cake. The money was small, but it made me feel alive again. I had a reason to wake up and work for myself. One Friday, my neighbor knocked on the door. She said, "There is a small cafe near the bus stop. They need fresh bread every day. I told them about you. The owner wants to meet you." My heart began to beat faster. I thanked her again and again. That weekend, I baked samples, white bread, brown bread, and sweet rolls. I carried them carefully to the cafe. The owner, a kind woman, tasted them and smiled. "I like your bread," she said. "Can you bring 10 loaves every morning?" I almost said yes right away, but I stopped. I thought about the work. I thought about my supplies. Then I said, "Yes, I can." Walking home, I felt light, almost like I was flying. It was not a big order, but it was my first real job in months. That night, I told my husband. He said, "Good. I am proud of you." My sons smiled and asked if they could help me bake. It was the first time in a long while that I felt we were on the same side. I knew it would be hard. I would have to wake up very early to bake before the cafe opened. I would have to buy more flour and yeast. But for the first time in many months, I felt like my life was moving forward. The next morning, I woke before the sun. The city was still quiet. The street outside was empty. I went to the kitchen and turned on the light. The small yellow bulb made the room warm. I washed my hands, tied my hair, and took out the flour, yeast, and salt. I started mixing the dough. My hands pressed and folded the soft mass again and again. The smell of yeast filled the air. I shaped the loaves and placed them on the trays. While they rose, I made tea and watched the sky turn pale blue. When the oven was hot, I slid the bread inside. Soon the smell spread through the whole flat. My sons came into the kitchen, still sleepy. "It smells good, Mom," one said. I gave them each a slice of yesterday's bread with butter. They sat and ate while I packed the new loaves into baskets. At 7 a.m., I carried the bread to the cafe. The air outside was cold, but my heart felt warm. The cafe owner smiled when she saw me. "Perfect timing," she said. She smelled the bread and nodded. "Yes, this will sell fast." She paid me and put the loaves on display. When I walked home, I felt light. The coins in my pocket were not much, but they were mine. I had earned them with my own hands. This became my new routine. Every day I woke before the sun. I baked, delivered, and cleaned the kitchen before my sons went to school. The work was not easy, but I felt proud. I was building something of my own. After 2 weeks, the cafe owner said, "Your bread sells out every morning. Can you bring 15 loaves instead of 10? My heart jumped. "Yes," I said. I needed more flour now, so I went to the market and bought big bags. The seller gave me a discount when I told him I was baking for the cafe. "Good bread brings good luck," he said. I smiled all the way home. At night, I started testing new recipes. Sweet rolls with cinnamon, small pies with apples, soft bread with herbs. My sons helped me taste them. Sometimes they gave funny faces. Sometimes they said, "This is amazing." I wrote the good recipes in my notebook. One evening, my husband came home with a bag of sugar and butter. "For your baking," he said. I looked at him and felt my eyes fill with tears. It was the first time he had bought something for my dream. The days were still full of work, but the house felt different now. My husband spoke to me with more respect. My sons told their friends that their mother made the bread for the cafe. I could see the pride in their eyes. One Saturday, the cafe owner invited me to sit for tea after my delivery. she said. Some customers ask if you can make bread for their homes too. If you want, I can give them your number. I almost dropped my cup. Yes, of course, I said. Soon, I had small orders from people around the neighborhood. Some wanted bread twice a week. Some wanted cakes for birthdays. I started writing down all the orders so I would not forget. But more orders meant more work. I woke even earlier, sometimes at 4 a.m., to prepare everything. My arms and back were tired, but my heart was happy. Each loaf that left my kitchen carried a part of me. One evening, I sat at the table and counted my earnings. It was not a huge amount, but it was enough to pay for half of the month's electricity bill. I showed my husband, and he said, "You are helping a lot." I was wrong before. Those words stayed in my heart for many days. By spring, I had saved enough to buy a second oven. It was not new, but it worked well. Now I could bake twice as much at the same time. I also bought new trays and a bigger table for the kitchen. My little space was turning into a real bakery corner. I decided to make a small sign and put it outside my door. Fresh bread and cakes. Ask inside. Some neighbors stopped just to talk. Others came with coins in their hands, smiling and pointing to the sign. One afternoon, a woman I had never seen before knocked on my door. She said, "I live 3 streets away. My friend told me you make the best bread here. Can I order for my family every week?" I said yes, my heart beating fast. That evening, I sat on the balcony with tea and watched the sunset. The light turned the buildings orange and pink. I thought about the last year. I thought about how I had cried in this same kitchen, feeling useless and invisible. Now, I felt seen. I felt needed. Still, I knew the road was not always smooth. Some days the bread was not perfect. Once the yeast failed, and I had to start again at 5 a.m. Another time, I burned a whole tray because I was distracted. But I learned from every mistake. One Sunday, my parents came to visit. I served them warm bread with cheese. My father smiled and said, "I knew you could do it." My mother hugged me and said, "You look happier now." That night, I planted a small lemon tree in a pot on the balcony. I wanted it to grow as my business grew. I thought, when this tree gives fruit, I will know I have made it. Summer came, and the cafe asked for more sweet rolls. Birthday cake orders increased. I started saving money each week. I put the coins in a small jar on the top shelf. It was my future jar. I did not know yet what I would use it for, but I liked seeing it fill up. One day, my sister visited again. She looked at the baskets of bread and said, "So this is working?" I smiled and said, "Yes, it is." She touched one loaf and said, "I was wrong. You were right to try." Her words felt like another layer of healing. By autumn, I was making enough to pay for my own supplies, give money for bills, and still save a little. My husband began to tell his friends about my work. "My wife bakes for the cafe," he would say with pride. "My son sometimes helped with deliveries." We laughed more at the table again. One evening, after finishing the last batch of bread, I sat by the lemon tree. The leaves moved gently in the wind. I thought about the dark days when I almost gave up. I thought about the first loaf I sold, the first coin in my hand. I thought about the feeling of being useful again. I knew life would still have problems. Bills would still come. Some weeks might be slow. But now I had proof that I could stand up again. I could build something from nothing. I touched the lemon tree and whispered, "We are both growing." For the first time in a long time, I believed in myself completely. We all go through hard times, but stories like this can help us feel seen. Thank you for watching, and come back for more real moments.